Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers. If you couldn't guess, Star Wars goes 3D in this episode. Now, get these off before I lose my ability to see at all. There we go. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. Of course, we are looking this time at the first of the Star Wars 3D comic line. Now, this is an unusual publication. Okay, a lot of times people don't realize it even exists because we tend to think of Star Wars publishing in comics as being Marvel Comics, Dark Horse Comics, and that's it. Nothing in between. But that's actually not the case. The Marvel Comics series, the regular series, ran up until May of 1986. Then up until March of 1987, we had those Star Comics series continuing, Droids and Ewoks, with Ewoks being the last one to put out an issue in March of 1987. Now, at that point, we tend to think of us as entering the dark age of Star Wars publishing, but not entirely, and we're going to deal with that in a special episode. Just a short time later, we saw the launch in June of 1987 of the Star Wars role-playing game. Though, of course, that's not novels, that's not comics, so for some people, they would say that doesn't count. But it's not a gap from 1987 to 1991 for Star Wars comics. Instead, we get 3 more Star Wars comics from an unexpected source within that gap. In December of 1987, celebrating, albeit months late, the 10th anniversary of Star Wars A New Hope in theaters, we got from Blackthorne Publishing, not Marvel, not Dark Horse, Star Wars 3D #1. Kind of a cool cover there, although honestly the fact that it's round kind of makes it look like one of those collector's plates a little bit. Millennium Falcon, of course, TIE Fighter chasing it down. It says 10th Anniversary Series. Not the 10th anniversary of Blackthorne with Star Wars, but the 10th anniversary of the Star Wars films beginning in theaters. This is #1, but only #1 for Star Wars. See, what Blackthorne was doing was they were producing basically a line of 3D comics. And every so often, they would just swap back and forth between different subjects for those 3D comics. This is actually Star Wars in 3D #1, Blackthorne 3D series number 30. Okay, so depending on how you look at it, it's either Star Wars 3D #1 or it's part of a broader series. But we only look at Star Wars, so we're calling it #1. Now, it's an unusual publication in that it's written and drawn by people that we don't tend to see in Star Wars. Len Wein is the writer, and Glenn Johnson is doing the artwork. And I think, fortunately, you probably are going to be able to see this better on the screen than I can with the naked eye. We have our Millennium Falcon shown from the bottom, being chased by TIE fighters and whatnot, kind of one of the more iconic images here. This is the work, again, of Glenn Johnson. And, of course, the way that this works, if you're not familiar with this type of 3D technology, is that you have what's called anaglyph 3D. And anaglyph can be done several different ways, but the most simplistic way is essentially using corresponding color glasses, right? Either red and blue or some other combination, or red and cyan, they call it, or some other color combination. The idea being that the red makes it so that only the blue comes through one eye, the blue makes only red come through the other eye because it's blocking out the same color as seen here in the book. And the further apart, essentially, the red and blue versions of something is, the more apart it seems in terms of depth from the frame itself. So you can barely see it. For the most part, this comic is mostly blue right on top of red with not a lot of difference. Every once in a while, we will run into something where it's red on top of something blue with no red with the blue, no blue with the red, going for some crazy depth effect. But generally, not a huge difference. So actually not a whole lot of depth to the images in this. For a 3D comic, it's not all that 3D, quite frankly. Granted, though, it kind of depends on which glasses you're using because some glasses filter out the red in this better than others do. Now, at this point in the Star Wars saga, chronologically, what we're dealing with here in issue #1, which has no actual title, it's just Star Wars 3D #1, the Death Star has been destroyed. Luke and Han and Chewbacca and the droids decide that they are going to go on a brief mission to Tatooine. And while they're doing so, Leia and General Dodonna are working on setting up for the evacuation of Yavin Base. Now that's going to play a role in the subsequent 2 issues here. Upon going to Tatooine, Luke visits the moisture farm where Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen had died, and he pretty much decides that he needs to do something with the moisture farm. It was part of his family, part of his childhood. He wants to make sure it gets into the right hands, whoever those hands might actually be. In looking for someone to hand off the farm to, they travel to, of course, Calman's Cantina, the Mos Eisley Cantina from A New Hope, where Luke gets guidance, again, from the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Right there saying, "Trust your feelings, Luke. Allow the Force to guide you." And it guides him, basically, to this guy drowning his sorrows in the bar. Well, this guy happens to be a man by the name of Throg. And we find that Throg is somewhat disenfranchised. He's gruff, he's burly, he's angry, but not necessarily because that is his nature. It's sort of what life and circumstances has turned him into. Luke approaches him, though Throg is not all that interested in conversation, and Luke starts by asking, "Excuse me, is anyone sitting here?" "You see anyone? Throg likes to drink alone." Oh goody, another alien that speaks of himself in third person. "I'm not interested in drinking, friend. Just have a little business I'd like to discuss." "Throg also works alone, little man, and Throg has no friends." "So I've heard, and that's why I want to talk to you." In the background, Han Solo is expecting Luke to get his butt kicked by Throg, and he says, "Oh, I don't think I can bear to watch this." Throg continues, "Throg does not want to talk. Throg wants to drink. Go away, little man, or Throg will hurt you." "I'll take my chances." "You are willing to die for a few pointless words? What could be so important to you?" "Not just to me, Throg, but to you. I have something to give you." "Throg has all he needs. Good booze and a fast ship." "Maybe you're satisfied, Throg, but are you at peace?" "Peace? What is peace?" And here's the clincher of who this character is and why the Force drew Luke to him. "Once, long ago, Throg was a farmer and was at peace with the land. Then the Empire came, took away Throg's farm, and Throg fled to the stars. Since that day, peace has been only a word." So he's sort of a tortured soul here who in farming found peace that he doesn't find in the life he lives now. Luke basically just gives him the deed to the Lars Moisture Farm, but Throg at first doesn't think that it actually will result in anything positive. He says, "My own farm again after all these years in space? After all the pain, the blood, the violence?" And he kind of looks at it, crumbles it up in his hand. "I'm sorry, little man," throws it over his shoulder. "For Throg, it is too late." At which point a bar fight breaks out, a bar brawl, during which our characters have to kick some butt to be able to escape. And Luke isn't quite sure what's going to happen with Throg, only Throg does wind up picking up that crumpled paper. And as our heroes escape into hyperspace, we see him travel to the Lars Moisture Farm, where it looks like Throg's going to start a new life. The narration says, "And in the blink of an eye, the Millennium Falcon is gone into hyperspace and new adventures. While on an isolated moisture farm, a monstrous ex-spice smuggler glances up from his labors to behold the distant telltale burst of light that signals a jump to light speed. And for the first time in more years than he can remember, he smiles. Throg thanks you, little man. May the Force be with you." Very nice. We finally get to see, from a continuity standpoint, what happens to the Lars Moisture Farm after the events of A New Hope. That's been kind of left up in the air, except a little bit that we got sort of hints of about the Empire buying up property and whatnot back in the Marvel series. But we know exactly what happens to the Lars Moisture Farm for certain, thanks to this. Now you might say, wait, this is the 3D series, it's not Marvel, it's not Dark Horse, it's not like they're actually going to make use of this story. Au contraire, this is one of these issues that first off is going to be reprinted very soon, probably by the time you watch this or right after you watch this, in the pages of Wild Space Omnibus Volume 1. So you will be able to see this soon. It's being reprinted by Dark Horse. It's going to be more of a mainstream audience type title once people finally see it in there as opposed to in the 1987 copy. And it has already been referenced in early EU when it comes to the Lars Moisture Farm. The contradiction that's often brought up is, no, Luke doesn't give it to Throg. It comes into the hands of Huff Darklighter. The Darklighter family, hello, Gavin, X-Wing books. At which point my response is, yeah, hello, they address that in the X-Wing books. Break out your copy of Star Wars Rogue Squadron, book 1 of the X-Wing series. This is my copy. It's got the little symbol there because it's an autographed copy signed by Michael Stackpole there on the inside. But flip to page 208. And on 208, we find out about this. It is Gavin and Wedge having a conversation in which Gavin Darklighter says, "I've met people before who later died. I remember Mr. Owen and Aunt Beru. That's what I called them on the couple of times Biggs let me tag along when he visited Luke at the Lars farm. When they died, my father took the farm over." Wedge frowned. "I thought Luke had given it to an alien." "In 3D number 1! To which he answers, clarifying the continuity issue. Yes, Throg was his name. He worked it for a couple of seasons, but my uncle wanted to add that farm to his holdings, so he got the Anchorhead Municipal Council to pass an alien landowner tax which would have broken Throg to pay. My father didn't hold with his brother's tactics, so Dad bought the farm from Throg, paying him what it was worth instead of letting Uncle Huff buy it in a tax auction. So, it's already been dealt with. This is going to be something I'm sure that people are going to scratch their heads about when they see it in Wild Space, but it's a contradiction that was already addressed very early on. Michael Stackpole was paying attention to extremely obscure early Star Wars EU sources, not from Marvel, but from Blackthorne. Very, very impressive, at least to me back at that time, and even really these days looking back. Not a lot of references back to the Blackthorne stuff ever in the Star Wars continuity. So, with that being said, this story, Star Wars 3D number 1 with no actual title, is it an essential read? No, it's not. It adds that really cool tidbit to the continuity where we know what happened to the Lars Moisture farm. But knowing what happened to the farm isn't in and of itself essential to understanding the broader Star Wars saga. So in that sense, no, it's not. But it is a cool little read, and it's kind of neat to see that it does fit in with the overall continuity. It's probably the best of this series, actually, when it comes to continuity and just general readability. But we'll see that as we move into the next 2 issues. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.